it's a bill that has a lot to do with stimulus, but a lot to do with other things as well. And frankly, I think the American people recognize that we're walking on an economic tightrope right now, and that this is not the time for excessive borrowing. It's also not the time for spending money on a wish list of congressional favors that people have been asking for. This is a time to be very serious about helping build our economy, and spending hundreds of millions of dollars on contraceptives or hundreds of millions of dollars even on nice things like helping teenagers understand the risks of sexually transmitted diseases. This has nothing to do with economic stimulus, and it's the wrong course for the Democratic House to have taken. I think you're going to see the Senate do something very different. I hope so. And Barack Obama should be given credit for saying he's going to talk to Republicans, but he needs to listen and incorporate some of the clear objectives that I think the nation has.
You know, Governor, the president already did get Henry Waxman and Nancy Pelosi to remove the contraceptive stimulus and the stimulus, I guess. So he's trying to work with his party, but it's not been easy. You had said that would be his most difficult battle. Is this a preview of coming attraction?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that congressional Democratic leaders want to pay back the people who have got them elected. They have some pet projects they want to see carried out. The sexually transmitted disease initiative, several $100 million, is a new one that's been put in. There are other spending programs that the Democrats have put in, and I think Barack Obama may or may not like them, but, you know, he needs to put his foot down and say we really are planning on bringing change to Washington, and bills that are filled with a parade of pork are not going to be accepted by the presidency. And frankly, at a time like this, when too much spending and profligate borrowing could cause us to potentially fall into stagflation or a collapse of our currency, we're in a bit of a tightrope here. We've got to be very, very careful that we're not spending too much, we're not borrowing too much. You know,
well, they argue, though, Governor, but they're arguing that that those are future fires you're referring to. That might be very real, but the real fire now, they argue, this is from the White House and from Democrats, this is the fire now, we got to get going, and that even if you're against all their spending, even economists against this have said, Governor, something should stick here and should stimulate here, whether you like it or not. What do you make of that?
Well, that's absolutely right. And I wrote an op-ed several weeks ago saying we should have a stimulus plan. We need a stimulus bill, but we have to make sure that we spend the right amount of money, not too much to cause a crisis in our currency. And at the same time, if we're going to be spending some additional money, we want to spend those dollars on things that are absolutely essential and on things that we would have spent money on anyway, regardless of the circumstances. We just pull those dollars forward. And that would be, for instance, rebuilding the helicopters that have been shot down and damaged in the conflicts over the last several years. It would include some infrastructure projects, but only those that are essential. Grass for the mall is probably not one of them. And so you have to measure it as what's the right size and what kind of spending will actually encourage the economy to grow. You know, the Democrats talk about a big a big tax cut, but there's not a big tax cut in this bill. It's a check to everybody, and we've already seen in the last stimulus bill that sending people checks doesn't grow the economy. Those dollars are just not spent.
So you would be favoring more like tax rate relief, something people could plan on for the foreseeable future, because we know with even the rate relief that can change too, but something of more enduring value.
Yeah, you recognize, of course, and everybody in America understands that we're not going to have everybody working for government. That if you want to see more jobs and expansion of our economy, you're going to have to get the private sector to decide to invest and to hire people. And they're not going to do that if consumers come into their store loaded with a $500 check, because they're going to recognize this is a one-time blip, it's a short-term thing, it's not something you invest to sustain in the future. But instead, if you give people a permanent tax cut and you bring down the burden on middle-income families, you're going to see businesses recognize that this is an opportunity for expansion. And frankly, Christina Romer, who is the president's designate as the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, her analysis said a tax cut has 3 times the multiplier effect. And compared to something like infrastructure spending with only 1.4 times.
Yeah, she said that before she said that before she joined this administration. Let me ask you though about Democratic criticism of the very points you raised, Governor, and that is I think it was Bill Clinton who said something like, you know, Republicans, every time there's a problem, cut taxes, cut taxes. It's the It's their same old argument, that dog don't hunt. In other words, referring to what's happening in the economy is because Americans gave Republicans a shot with these tax cuts, and they didn't seem to do anything. What do you say?
Well, actually, every time there have been tax cuts, going back to John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan, tax cuts have in fact spurred the economy. And what has happened in our most recent turndown has virtually nothing to do with tax policy. It has everything to do with the excessive lending by banks and excessive borrowing by homeowners to buy homes, in many cases where they couldn't afford to pay back those mortgages, and that's caused a worldwide economic crisis. It has nothing to do with tax rates in the U.S. On the other hand, if you want to get the economy going again, and this has been proven time and time again, you have to give people a sense of permanence and a reduction in a tax rate. And that's why Christina Romer, you're right. She said this multiplier, 3 times multiplier, was much bigger than an infrastructure spending. She said that before she was in the administration. I hope she's making that point loud and clear in the administration, because Republicans want to do what's right for America and want to get this economy going again. We want the president to succeed.